Georgie and Mandy's first marriage was able to bring attention to a negative aspect of Georgie's connection with the Coopers and Young Sheldon. Because of the increased emphasis on Georgie and Mandy, focusing on Georgie allowed Mandy's first marriage to highlight his viewpoint, which could have been about new business ideas or about his grief over his father's death, as shown most clearly by his insistence that Mary, Missy, and Mamor spend Thanksgiving with him. Nevertheless, a tragic aspect of Georgie's connection with the Coopers was exposed through his interactions with the McAllisters. Even though Jim and Audrey made an appearance in the 6th season of Young Sheldon, Mandy acted as a go-between whenever they saw Georgie or the Coopers. Every one of Georgie's initial encounters with the McAllisters went through Mandy because her pregnancy with CC was the catalyst for multiple plot points in Young Sheldon, which caused mayhem in the sleepy town of Medford and tested her bond with her parents. Prior to the first marriage, Young Sheldon paid little attention to Georgie's relationship with Jim and Audrey, since she was too busy celebrating relationship milestones with Mandy and uncovering Memo's hidden gambling chamber. Georgie and Mandy's first marriage episode already showed Georgie happily spending his nights playing cards with the McAllisters, despite his recurring conflicts with Audrey, coming from her inability to consider Georgie as a suitable marriage partner for Mandy. On the other hand, Episode 6 of First Marriage showed that Georgie was game to hang out with Audrey and Jim without Mandy in the middle. The fact that Georgie was so good at cards in the 4th episode of First Marriage suggested that she might just play with them to beat them, but instead, she suggested Jenga or Monopoly, and then she accepted Jim's offer of gin rummy. While Georgie's life at home with the Coopers was considerably more disjointed in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, he happily spends his leisure time with the McAllisters and has breakfast and dinner with them consistently. His big life decisions, such as quitting sports and school, caused friction with his parents, even before Georgie became pregnant with Mandy. This made the limited time he spent at home even more difficult compared to his time with the McAllisters in First Marriage, where he mainly dined and watched TV. Afterwards, his time with the Coopers is pallid. Despite the fact that Young Sheldon frequently brought out how different Georgie was from everyone in his family, he had a close bond with Mary and George Sr., even though Mary was open about her firstborn's intellectual disability. George Sr. and Georgie had a love of football, and George Sr. even coached Georgie when he was in school. Unfortunately, he was left to pursue his interests alone or with Missy, as George's departure from football severed the one link he had with George Sr. The reason George's connection with his parents is problematic was brilliantly shown in episode 21 of Season 1 of Young Sheldon, when Mary and George were apart from Sheldon. George's time with Missy was more successful than Mary's with Georgie because George had the finest grasp of Missy's personality. Mary, on the other hand, had a preference for Sheldon, and her interactions with Georgie served to highlight how foreign her firstborn appeared in comparison to Sheldon and Missy. Because Georgie was no longer able to spend time with either of his parents in Georgie and Mandy's first marriage, his downtime with the McAllisters in the Young Sheldon spinoff seemed all the more tragic, and the fact that he had a life outside the home further severed his ties to George and Mary.